This is Keys to the Shop, special live edition from Coffee Fest 2024 in New York City. Well, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DiFiorio. I'm your host for the show. Take a moment and subscribe to Keys to the Shop on podcast channels that you frequent, and also on YouTube at Keys to the Shop, where we are working on growing that channel. And be sure to share these episodes with your friends, with your email list, with your network. Let people know about Keys to the Shop. 7 years, over 850 episodes, an incredible range of hundreds and hundreds of experts from around the world of coffee and beyond, even in leadership, management, to help you run a wonderful coffee business and have a great time doing it. So thank you very much, everybody. Now, this episode is a special one. We do these frequently with trade shows where I get to interview speakers at Coffee Fest and sometimes even attendees. I might do that again, actually, pretty soon. But, Coffee Fest is something I've been doing for quite a while. If you're not familiar, the trade show Coffee Fest has been a 3-decade-long force for positive change in retail coffee. Coffeefest.com is where you can learn more information about the 4 shows per year that they do that are targeted specifically for small businesses in the coffee retail space. And it delivers a ton of value. By far, the most valuable and affordable direct from your experience to your coffee shop event that you could go to. I realize that sounds like a big promise, but I've been doing this long enough. I've seen it myself, and this is the truth. So if you want to take you and your team out there to experience that, then definitely sign up to go to New Orleans. That's the next one coming up. And then we have Los Angeles, followed by the show in Minneapolis. So again, all that information is over at coffeefest.com. Now, today we're going to be talking with a host of different people. Well, I say a host. We're going to talk with 4 different people. First, we're going to be talking with Sarina Prabasi, who is the founder of Buunni Coffee. Then we're going to move on to talk with Grit and Grind coffee founders Eric and Destiny Rowell, followed by Sara Vettori, who is the consultant at Asia Bites. And then finally, Angie Davis, vice president over at Mill City Coffee Roasters. So we're going to start our time with Sarina Prabasi, who is the co-founder of Buunni Coffee. So this is kind of a 2-parter, but we're going to release it as one longer episode. So feel free to, kind of listen to one interview and then listen to the next interview and go from there. But these are speakers that were at Coffee Fest, and they're going to be talking about a few different things related to the subjects that they were speaking on. Now, we're going to start our time with Sarina Prabasi, who is the co-founder of Cafe Buunni in New York City. They started as an Ethiopian coffee-focused online shop, and they opened their first coffee house in Washington Heights in 2012. And since then, they have Inwood and Riverdale locations, and they have been all about community. And that's what we're going to be talking to Sarina about today. We're going to start talking about exactly how they got started, and then talking about how they continue to invest in creating connections with their community. And that's an important part of what gives life to a coffee shop. It's the cause of your coffee shop, of course, and integrity within the values of your business, but also making sure that that connection with your community is strong. And it's not just a byline of your mission statement, it's something that guides your actions. And Sarina does a fantastic job here as we talk on the show floor in describing to us how they have gone about it and what we out here in the listening audience can do to do the same thing in our coffee shops. So let's get started with this first interview with the co-founder of Buunni Coffee, Sarina Prabasi. Sarina, welcome to Keys to the Shop.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we found a little corner here on the show floor to have our interview because everything is just busting at the seams. It's really busy today.
It is busy. It's been a busy show.
Yeah, I love it. It's great ambiance in the background. But you have you already given your talk? You're giving like 5 talks this week, right?
Maybe slightly less than 5, but yeah,
okay.
a number of them.
I see your name popping up all over the place. So and you're all over the show floor. I see you there, and so you're super busy. This is your hometown.
Yes.
In New York.
Yes.
This wasn't always your hometown.
No.
So tell us a little bit about Buunni Coffee. how this became your hometown and how you founded the company.
Yeah, so my husband Elias and I moved from Addis Ababa to New York City. And when we moved from Ethiopia to New York, we knew we wanted to bring something positive related to Ethiopia. And if you know any Ethiopians, very proud of coffee. So we thought coffee would be a good way, also a good bridge for us to, as we created our new home and get to know our neighbors. And so when we started Buunni, it was really a mutual experience where we were offering tastings of our coffee, but we were also meeting our new neighbors and getting to know our new community and create relationships.
Wow. Okay. So it was time for a change. Wanted to move here. The relationships and the community was the main thing that you were interested in. And of course, coming from Ethiopia, I mean, that's the birthplace of coffee. So
it's the birthplace of coffee. And also we really felt that there was something about like the whole ethos of Ethiopian coffee, like the hospitality, the slow coffee, the let's linger and chat, which is a little bit like the opposite of New York coffee, which is I want it in a hurry, I want it to go. The first time we experienced espresso to go. So we knew we couldn't just copy and paste Ethiopian coffee to New York, but we wanted to bring some of that feeling. And so in our cafes in Washington Heights and Inwood and Uptown in Manhattan, we really have cultivated that sense of let's linger for a while. And we have a very wonderful, lovely, regular customer base, very much like neighborhood coffee.
Yeah. I love that. So you're introducing this way of life in coffee to your area in New York City. And were you roasting at this time? Were you using other people? You're just importing from people you knew from Ethiopia? How did that work?
We knew pretty early on that we didn't want to take on like the logistics of storage, insurance, shipping containers. We were really interested in the consumer experience of coffee.
Right.
So in the beginning, we were roasting ourselves, like home roasting, Ethiopian style pan roasting, and doing tastings.
Really?
And then when we decided that we were going to open cafes and the retail side was growing, then we knew that we couldn't do both as well as we wanted at the same time. So we handed over the roasting to a good friend and coffee company that handled the roasting for us for a while we grew the cafes.
Yeah.
And then over the last few years, we've taken back the roasting. We've been roasting for a couple of years now at Shared Roasting in Brooklyn. This spring, we're launching our own roastery and shared, like, collective roasting, co-roasting space.
Yeah.
It's going to be in the Bronx.
And this is called the Roasting Room.
The Roasting Room. Okay. And it will be in the South Bronx, which, is not where you find a lot of specialty coffee in New York.
Right. Yeah, you got to get it up in the northern boroughs. Right?
Yeah, so we are really trying to cultivate the same idea of coffee and community that we have in the cafes, but now into the roasting space as well.
Okay, so let's talk about community a little bit, because that is the word that outside of sustainability might be the most used word that people have.
Yes.
And everyone means something different by it. So I'm curious to know how you navigated a place like New York City with expectations that have been born from years of trying really quick, not engaging service. Maybe that's unfair. People hear this, they're like, that's not, you're going to the wrong places, Chris. But the stereotype is there for New York City. It's hustle, it's bustle, and you want to slow it down a little bit. How did you get people to really connect with this and also stay in business? Because you want to get like lots of people in the coffee shop, right? But what you're describing sounds, it sounds like, how do I make a profit with slow coffee?
Yeah. I mean, we find that actually the most profitable relationships are the strongest actual relationships. So when we spend the time talking to a customer, telling them the story, or hearing their story, listening to their story, it's much more likely that they're going to come back and they're going to bring their friends. And we're going to have a long-term relationship with this customer. Yeah. And so I think that definitely it also helps that we're in neighborhoods. We're not in we're not in Midtown. We're not like a transactional coffee shop. Of course, we want to sell coffee, but we're also, the same customer is also buying bags of beans. The same customer is also coming to events that we host. The same customer is bringing their family on the weekend. Or, so we really engage with people where we are, and we've found a real hunger for this. We found that there are a lot of people who do want to sit and chat, who do want to meet their neighbors, who want a place where they can connect with other people. You know, a lot of that was very much challenged during the height of COVID.
Yeah.
But up until then, that was really the model. It was really a place to get together. And you might laugh, Chris, if you saw our first cafe, because it is tiny. It is so tiny. In that sense, it's a true New York space.
Yeah.
But we have a communal table. And I have a now friend who started as a customer who says to me, you know, you forced us to talk to each other because you basically made a dining table in your cafe.
Yeah.
And eventually somebody needs to get up, somebody needs to move or charge their device or whatever.
Gotta say,
and we have to talk to each other.
That's wonderful. That's a good, I like that idea that you force people. And it's not that you're saying this is something you definitely don't want to do and I'm going to make you do it. But people, I think you mentioned, they really want to chat. They want that conversation. I will say, for me, if I don't explicitly hear somebody say they want that conversation or they want this or that, I'm just going to assume you don't. I'm not going to engage unless engaged with. Sometimes if I'm in a hurry, if I'm going to work, but it's when somebody reaches out and provides the platform for me to get some of that desire that I've kind of stuffed down because it's not convenient, to have a platform, that it sounds like what you're doing, like tapping into people's deep needs and wants for community, even though they're not actually saying, hey, I'd like to have a conversation.
Exactly, yeah. I have people saying, you know, they'll say something like, I met my best friend here, or I was new to the neighborhood, I didn't know anybody, and Buunni is how I got to make friends. There's a lot of coming and going in New York. So sometimes people find themselves at a life change, or they move neighborhoods, or they just moved to New York, or, you know, so many different things can happen. And they're at a point where it can be a little lonely. And so having a space, a low pressure space, where, you know, it's a cup of coffee is the barrier to entry is low, and also the commitment is low, right? So it's not, it's a low risk environment to just have a chat with some of your neighbors. So we found that people really like that. And with the roasting room, we're taking that to the next level, really deepening the focus on coffee roasting, but also the community of small businesses, small coffee businesses for whom roasting might be the hurdle.
Yes. So interesting that you brought up the pandemic, because there are some people that used it as a way to get out of doing the things that they were doing that they didn't want to do, but they said, I need to do it because I need to make money, but I don't like it. It's not really what I envisioned my business doing. By providing this space for small business owners and roasters, this co-roasting space, you're giving them an opportunity to have an easier way to be successful and therefore have more clarity to see better decisions for their business. So they're not as desperate to take on this or that. Like they still want to enjoy running the business as much as your customers want to enjoy getting a cup of coffee from you. So what does hospitality look like when you're going from this consumer to now basically peers? These are peers of yours. How do you show hospitality to other business owners?
Our approach is really about meeting people where they are and really listening to what their needs are, what problems need to be solved, how we can be of service.
Right.
You know, it's also about learning and sharing together. As you said, it's a peer relationship. So, you know, we're really excited about also learning from the other businesses that are going to come into the space.
Yeah.
Sort of growing the pie together, really looking at it as a more collaborative. Specialty coffee is such a small slice of the overall coffee industry.
Yes.
So we're really looking at it as like, how can we grow our share together by learning, by collaborating, by sharing, rather than by competing with each other. So that is kind of the idea. Obviously, you know, we'll see. If you have me on your show again, we'll tell you how it's going.
Yeah. No, I love it. So let me ask you about your presentations here at Coffee Fest, because one of them is about community. And I'm curious what you would say to people here about building your cafe and your business for community, to resonate with your neighborhood, the way you're describing now. I like the sound of it. What's the step I need to take? What's the physical action in the next couple of weeks? If we want to be better at this ourselves, what would you recommend we do?
That's a great question, and it's a tough one. I think it really is to be guided by your local community because each place is different. So it's like listening to the customers. What are they saying? What do you also, even if you live in the same neighborhood as your cafes, which we do, then we also notice like what's missing or what seems to be generating excitement or what
Yeah.
are people talking about. One of the things we did very early on is we partnered with local artists, and we have a rotating art show at Buunni at each location every 6 weeks. We have cultivated like a community of artists, but also people who can appreciate local art and have this conversation around artists in the community.
Yes.
That's just one small example. But another example, when people talk about community, I think a lot of it is also beyond the words, right? It's really being willing to take some risk and have some trust.
Ooh.
The example I'll give is our first cafe. We had been open for a while, and I said, there's hardly a time when the whole team can go anywhere or do anything together because we work in shifts. It's New York City, so we're open 7 days a week. So when do we actually have a team day or a staff day? And I was gonna close the shop for a day, and it was a summer, August, we were gonna go to the beach. And one of my customers said, well, you don't have to close the shop. The regulars will run it for you for the day.
What?
And I said, well, that's interesting. Let's talk about how that would work. And we put together a sign-up sheet. People volunteered for mini shifts. We took our staff to the beach, and the customers ran the shop for the day. Now that is like an example of really having trust both ways in your community.
Yeah.
And for those aren't just words, right? We literally left our cafe with the customers. They loved it. They still talk about it.
Wow.
And we had this unforgettable beach day with our team. And like that, I think is kind of like the magic when it works.
That I've never heard of anybody doing that. I've had the opposite where people like try to make their own drink or something don't get behind the bar. What are you doing? But that is amazing. And obviously the credit to you all for developing such a relationship that they want to support you because, well, first of all, they want coffee, but also they want to support your business because they love your business. They want to see you grow. And that's something that you get from showing up every day on their behalf. How do you train your staff to have that same mindset as you do? Because you're passionate, you started it, that you got to hire people who have the same mindset. What does that look like?
We just talk a lot with our staff. We share our story with the staff. Whenever new people come, we try to onboard them in a way that, even the way we hire, a lot of times we are more interested in people skills than we are in the coffee skills.
Yep.
Because we can train for coffee. And the other part is it's the intangibles. It's like how you relate to people, whether you exude kindness and openness. Like those are things that we look for. But a lot of it is, really talking to our team about what this business is all about.
Yes. And so that conversation just kind of helps them catch it.
Yeah. Everybody can relate. I think that you've had an experience. You've walked into a store where you haven't really felt welcomed and you just didn't feel comfortable and you left and you're not going to go back there again.
Yeah.
And their product might be fantastic, but you're not going to remember the product. You're going to remember how you felt. And so that's what we talk to our staff about.
I love it. And frankly, if I have a bad day as a barista, but I feel like where I work is so good and people have so much trust in it. My boss is so great. They're always talking to us and caring for us. I'm going to put on a braver face. I'm going to actually say, okay, but even though I'm having a bad day, I'm still going to show up because I want to see this business succeed. And I know they've invested into me. And so it's like, invest into your staff the way you are, invest into your community, and then everything gets taken care of. And you can go to the beach.
Well, there's always more to do. We can always do better. So I don't believe in being too self-congratulatory, There's always room for improvement. But these are the things we're trying. And we're also super excited to be at Coffee Fest with our staff. We have a lot of our baristas here, and they're at our booth. They're serving coffee,
Nice.
and it's a great experience. and exposure for them as well to like other businesses, how a coffee trade show runs. It's an exciting time for them as well.
Love it. Sarina, I really appreciate you taking the time here. Thank you for being here, and thank you for what you do. Where can we learn more about Buunni Coffee and then also the roasting room?
So roastingroom.coffee is our brand new website.
Yeah.
And buunnicoffee.com. It's the same founders, it's the same people behind both, but for the roasting room, it really is an invitation for people who are, looking for roasting, coffee education, getting into the space to come in and pay us a visit. We'd be happy to show you around.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much to Sarina for taking time at Coffee Fest to talk with me. If you're interested in what they're doing out there in New York, go ahead and visit them, buunnicoffee.com. Of course, links in the show notes. Great conversation about connection in your community. Now we're going to focus on mobile coffee with the founders of Grit and Grind Coffee, Eric and Destiny Rowell. They left their 9-to-5 jobs and created a beautiful coffee brand in the form of a mobile cart. And the success of their trailer, Grit and Grind, has really propelled them to be leaders in helping other people do the same thing to start coffee trailers. You can visit them at gritandgrind.coffee, learn more about their story, but they were speaking on success in mobile coffee at Coffee Fest. And so that's exactly what we're going to talk with them about in this conversation at Coffee Fest. This is a subject, obviously, that is exploded, especially since the pandemic times, where we see a lot more people interested in mobile, in carts, trailers, and trucks, and things like that. And Grit and Grind focuses mostly on trailers. But the mobile ethos and framework for how to approach these things, and just common business knowledge, is really applicable across a lot of different applications. So it was great to talk to both of them at Coffee Fest. I hope you find a lot of value in this, and they certainly have been adding value to this community of mobile coffee for a bit now. And yeah, let's get right to it. Here now is my conversation on mobile coffee with the founders of Grit and Grind, Eric and Destiny Rowell. All right, Eric and Destiny Rowell, thank you for being here.
We're super, super pumped. This is actually our second time in New York. So this time last year was our very first. So We're pumped to be here again and be able to see familiar faces, I guess.
Nice.
We know our way around, so we're super excited to get to just embrace everything.
Very cool. Yeah, you guys, I met you in Orlando, I think, and you were presenting, and you've just been helping a lot of people with mobile coffee. You've got a cool story where you launched this and it was super successful, but it was a lot of work to make it successful. And mobile coffee is huge now, not just because of the pandemic. I think that kind of jump-started a lot of people to get an idea like what's a low-risk way to get involved in coffee. Was that kind of your story with mobile coffee, or tell us a little bit about the history of Grit and Grind?
I would say 100% that is our backstory on this. We live in a small town called Opp, Alabama, with about 6,000 people. Didn't have a coffee shop. Eric traveled a lot for his previous job. And that was like the number one thing you do. When your feet hit the ground off of a plane, you just find a coffee shop. And so we live in a small town, but we actually have a route that goes straight to the beach. So it's actually high in tourists. So when you plug in coffee shop, the closest coffee shop was like an hour away, out of your way to have to travel to. And so we were like, how can we pretty much solve this problem for our community? And that was how it kind of started.
I would also say that we're in other investments, and we were looking for an opportunity to grow some of our investments. And being during the pandemic, we was like, okay, how do we do that? And we were heavily involved in real estate, and that wasn't really an option at that time. But just like you said, it's how can I put a little bit in this investment and prove concept before I go all in?
Okay, and so what did you do to start? I'm sure that's the question. Everyone's like, hey, you did this. How do I do it?
So it was a lot of finding resources out there, which are very slim. And not a lot of people want to share their numbers with you. There's a lot of numbers that you do find that's out there as far as coffee industry, how much are you making, margins. And then you have that for a coffee shop, but how does that translate into a mobile? So we didn't have a lot to work with. So we knew that we wanted to start with a small risk factor, small investment. So we started off with just a utility trailer. We converted into a mobile, threw a window in there, put in a bar, put in an espresso, figured out the wattage. What do we need to run a decent espresso machine? Because we wanted to make sure that we still serve specialty coffee and keep that kind of quality as a coffee shop, but in this little micro mobile, unit. So we started off super small investment, about $28,000 in our small town. Very small. Yeah. It was mainly equipment. So mainly the whole investment was equipment, a little bit of cash flow for product and inventory. And so we started off, we partnered up with the city. We said, hey, we would love to eventually bring a coffee shop here, but we're scared to death because we don't even know what we're doing, And we didn't want to get in over our head, like Eric said. We wanted to prove a concept, create a brand that had a storyline behind it so that we could create a community that would eventually be a following.
Yeah.
And so we did that in small little steps. The city partnered with us. They let us park our mobile trailer in a vacant lot.
Oh, nice.
And so we really didn't travel too much. We did a little bit as far as in our little city so that we can be in front of more eyes. We were very strategic where we parked our mobile trailer so that way we knew it was hitting our ideal customer.
Yeah.
So we partnered up with libraries that were close to schools or healthcare workers where we got to park in front of their hospital.
Yeah.
For a few months we did that, and then we were able to be permanent in that lot that they gave us. So people then pretty much found us. I don't know, it all started with that little bitty investment, and I don't know, it has grown so much since.
So when you started to notice that it was growing, like when was that, and how did that change the way that you approach the business? Because at first, it's a small investment, you're scared to death, but then you see it starting to work, and now I imagine some of the fear is taken away, like, oh, people like us. And they like this, and maybe we should do what? How did you scale from there, or what did refinement look like, or scaling look like for you?
I would say step one was reinvest into the business as soon as we proved concept, because just like most people, we were a little scared to get the nicest espresso machine. So we started, budget friendly and realized, man, I wish we would have just bought that high-end machine that allowed us to do larger volume. So step one was reinvest into the business, right? Upgrade so we can handle larger events and volume and so forth. And we just kept doing that, and we would see more success. We would just pour more fuel to the fire.
Okay, so reinvest into the one business, not open more businesses.
Not yet.
Okay.
But that escalated really quickly. My background is teaching. I taught graphic design. I have a degree in marketing and graphic design. So from get-go, we implemented SOPs. I had detailed and it was just him and I. He had a real job, a full-time job. I still did a real job, a 9 to 5. I still did branding, photography, and marketing on the side. So this was our side hustle at first. We realized really quickly that we needed full attention because we were onto something. And a lot of people ask us, how do you grow so fast? And I say a lot to branding and marketing, but a lot to being able to document every single process. We did that from the beginning.
Good.
And so
Wow.
we were able to scale whenever we wanted to. We didn't have to think about, oh crap, we can't scale this because how do I show you how to do it? No, here's an SOP that I created when it was just him and I. We didn't even need it, but it was saved in the back locker for whenever we're very strategic thinkers.
I love that because, we love SOPs on the show. We talk about it a lot, and it is a challenge between people who really want to grow organically and then people who want to do things with systems as if those are two different things. Or at least they think, if I don't want to develop systems because I don't want to get too rigid. I don't, I want this to be a fun place. I want it to be relationships. And it doesn't sound like that impeded anything. It actually sounds like it helped you with relationships.
Absolutely. Yeah. That was, I think, the thing that caught everything on fire, because from there, people came into our shop, absolutely loved what we did as far as the environment that we created, the feeling that they felt when they came in as far as customer service. And then the product being great is just an add-on at that point. We have a system implemented for everything from customer service to the product. And it was the only factor that enabled us to grow and scale. We started our mobile coffee trailer. We were running for about 6 months, immediately signed a lease and bought a building, went into a full-blown coffee shop. We still took our trailer to the next city over to build brand awareness, and now we're in that city. And we just rinsed and repeat it. It happened very organically where people would reach out and say, hey, I love what you're doing, but I don't have the time to figure it all out. And so we were picky about who we partnered with, but we would offer partnerships as far as franchising. And so that happened organically again, but we had all those systems in place that we were like, well, we have everything, so why not, grow?
I would say that we would have never been able to implement that and grow like we did if we would not have had those processes in place. They were so crucial for our business. That's one of the things we're going to talk about tomorrow. Like, kind of strategically have your plan on where do you want to bring your business. Like, is it just going to be a side hustle? Then maybe it's not necessary as much. But if you want to implement and have employees or grow beyond your one location, it's a necessity.
Well, one pushback that would be for especially someone who's going to franchise, or they have in their mind, that's why I asked about you invested into the business and not opening other businesses, because immediately when people are at a Coffee Fest show or they see the success of other people, they're saying, well, that's what I need to do, and I need to do it quickly. So I'm going to use the SOPs, I'm going to use these checklists, and I'm going to scale. And sometimes people can scale too quickly and they won't reinvest into the business. So we all know there's coffee shops out there that have opened many stores, but each one is like highly dysfunctional because they haven't reinvested. But that's what I should do. Yeah. So how do you balance reinvestment into the business with the systems that might tempt you to scale before you're ready? How do you know you're ready to scale? Even if you have the systems in place for the one, is there something that you have to make sure is in place before you scale the leadership, the relationships? What makes a successful scaling effort besides SOPs and systems?
I would say due diligence, just about everything, right? So what we're going to do is, for us, when we're strategically thinking about this, we're going to reach out to people in our industry. We're going to learn about their success stories, learn about their pitfalls, and then we're going to bring that back to the drawing board. We're going to do a financial analysis. We're going to kind of like, okay, just hypothetically, if I invest X, is it going to reach Y? And then what's that timeline look like? So a lot of due diligence and kind of product research is what we like to call it, is kind of how we approach that.
All right.
It's also a lot of partnering up with the right people. So not everyone who came to us to partner up with us, we were like, yes, let's just open up. It wasn't a quantity thing. It wasn't it wasn't a numbers thing as far as I want 100 grit and grinds. I want 10 that work at their maximum. Where someone in Utah can go to a grit and grind and come to mine in Alabama and have the same exact experience.
What is the experience you want people to have?
We always say anyone could copy my recipes. You can take everything I do. You can have my roaster to the T. You can serve the exact cup of coffee, but you will never, ever be able to duplicate my experience. That you walk in the door, how you're greeted, how our baristas are familiar with the customers, where we're taking the time to almost scan their social media and know they just got married. And then on their cup, we're saying congratulations, or it's their birthday, and we write happy birthday. Like, that goes way beyond. And we're from the South, so it may be different in different areas of the country, but we are very, very high on that hospitality ranking.
So we believe one of our strengths is we've kind of been on both ends of the spectrum in our life. Like, we've kind of, been in rooms with high performers, millionaires, we're just rubbing shoulders with them. But we've also been at the other end of the spectrum where we've kind of lost everything, right? So we've had this journey in life to where we're able to meet all walks of life, which we believe that is ultimately one of our benefits and strengths as people, and we just meet people where they are. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter who you are. And that's more than just a saying. When you walk that out in life, people are drawn to that.
What does it look like in your culture of grit and grind to walk that out on a daily basis? You mentioned the cups and things like that. I imagine what you're describing as having had the full spectrum life experience, that you're able to relate to people better, both maybe the staff and the customer as well. Is that accurate?
Yes, absolutely. So our core values is love others, spread light, and work hard. 3 super simple, and it's very, if you broke it down, it is very simple, but there's so many micro things under it. But from our team to the way we create a community with them to the way we go and do outreach, we're in our community all the time. And we suggest to even our baristas and our employees to go out and go to a baseball game or go to a football game, even if you don't have anyone play, and just show your face so that way it creates that, I see you. Oh, I've seen you before. I've seen you a couple times. And then you walk in, then you feel a little bit more comfortable walking into my coffee shop because you've seen that I post on social media and that's where I work. And then you're more likely to kind of feel familiar when you walk into a place.
Yes. Yeah. Fellow human being.
Yes.
Okay. So you mentioned not partnering with some people and partnering with others. And you're talking about franchisees in that conversation. What is the thing that says, oh, this is the right person versus the wrong person?
So typically our brand was developed to attract, and ideally in my mind, when I developed the brand, I wanted a coffee shop where entrepreneurs, at-home workers can come just escape their home office and just have somewhere that they can work. We have, I mentioned, we have a few colleges in our town so they can come and study. But it was really that ideal demographic. And so it goes on to our franchising and our brand where we've had this little extra piece go out where we've attracted other entrepreneurs. So a lot of the people we partner with honestly wasn't a lot of dreamers of, I want to own a coffee shop.
Yeah.
They found out later that the coffee changes their life. The whole industry is amazing and the people that are involved is amazing, but that wasn't the initial, thing that started it.
Yeah, I would also say we don't rush the process. We've had countless people come to us and they were like, oh, the franchise fee is X. I have that. Let's sign up today. And it's like, no, pump the brakes, buddy. We need to have a dating process. And usually that looks anything like 3 to 6 months. We're going to meet multiple times in person. I'm going to dive deep into your social media or wherever I can to find information about you. You're going to do the same thing. So really it's learning who they are as a person before we even have that second conversation, which is a lot of meetings, a lot of phone calls, whatever that looks like.
Right.
Vetting process.
Yeah, it goes back to our core values though. Like we have to make sure that they are naturally aligned with them.
Yes. And it's funny because it takes a long time to do something like that because who a person is not identifiable after even 2, 4, 6 conversations. Like we have a good way of putting on airs as people. Like when you're hiring somebody, everyone's a professional, So it's hard to determine. So you got that sixth sense in you right now, like that intuition, right? Okay. And you can say, I see that. And okay, so what you're teaching tomorrow here to people, if you could like wave a wand and say, everyone's going to walk away with this aha moment or this insight from our experience, what would you want that to be?
I would say, the mobile coffee industry specifically is booming. It's a great opportunity to get in and test the market. If you're like wanting to learn about coffee, mobile coffee is a great place to start. Again, prove your concept first. And then beyond that, we want to just have a checklist because we're all about giving somebody something that they can implement, actionable, not just, words. So a checklist of, hey, these are the things that need to happen, step 1, for you to be able to have that mobile coffee business.
Yeah, and even in the checklist, it'll go back to documenting those processes. Even if you don't even know if that's the right process yet, document it because you might have to go back and realize, okay, that's not how I'm supposed to brew cold brew. But you have that SOP, you can discard it or you could change it up. But at least getting into that mindset of before you do anything and everything, jot it down, even if it's on a piece of paper, just documentation of the whole process, the journey, because we've always documented everything and people love to see the process. Mainly people love to see the transparency where you screw up. Because they're like, oh, you're human too. I'm human.
Yeah.
This is not perfect. I did just not start a mobile coffee trailer and, now I have 7. There was a lot of crap in between what you see now and then.
Yeah.
And we've documented every bit of it. And I think it makes people feel like, okay, I can do this,
Yeah, and you're allowed to make mistakes because even though they might have you to help them, that doesn't mean they're not going to make mistakes. In fact, it would be kind of bad if they never made mistakes because that's how you learn, right? And how you knew it was your SOP, your checklist, is because you took time to get to know who you were in the process. So it's not as easy as being like, oh, well, I'll just do what they're doing. And it's like, who are you while you do it is also part of the conversation. And you're imperfect. So
1,000%.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited for y'all. Good to see you at the show again. Where can we learn more about Grit and Grind?
So we are all over the place. We are on Facebook at Grit and Grind _coffee, TikTok at Grit and Grind Coffee, Instagram at Grit and Grind Coffee, maybe? Just Google us. We'll find you if you can't find us too. So.
We also have a really awesome free resource that we've kind of built out because, like we said, when we first started, there wasn't a lot of information on mobile coffee industry specifically. So we are trying to bridge that gap, and we create a free Facebook group that has 15,000 people currently, and they all come there and collaborate. It's a really good, positive atmosphere that we've created. So definitely go there and check it out.
Where's that at though?
Facebook, Mobile Coffee Business Entrepreneurs.
Nice. It just rolls off the tongue. Yeah.
I can never remember what it is. I'm like, But then also our TikTok, we utilize our TikTok specifically for mobile coffee education. I mean, people flood it with questions, and I just try to do my best when we're working on the bar just to kind of answer. And so it's really cool for them to see us in the atmosphere, and solve those problems that they're currently asking in real life. So it's really neat. It's a good resource too.
Wonderful. Nice. You're on the grind. Good. Thank you guys both.
Thank you.
All right. Huge thank you to Eric and Destiny for sitting down with me. You can find more information about Grit and Grind Coffee. Just go to gritandgrind.coffee, and everything is there. Their story, you can order online, education, services, their blog, and you just dive into the world of Grit and Grind from there. So next up, we are going to be talking with Angie Davis, who is the vice president at Mill City Coffee Roasters, who has the big red roasting rig at Coffee Fest shows. They come to every show with that, and they teach roasting, they show roasting. They are really all about education and creating kind of a democratized environment of expertise around traditional coffee roasting. People all over the world love Mill City, and they are on a mission to help more and more people be successful in their coffee roasting business. And in this conversation, we're going to be talking mostly about roastery architecture with Angie Davis and the things that we need to plan for in roasteries that create effectiveness, efficiencies, create profitability, mitigate problems. It is a undertaking to create a coffee roastery. And the dream can turn into a nightmare easily if you're not cognizant of some basics that will actually just be the foundation of how you can grow and scale and just operate smoothly. And that's what we're going to talk about with Angie today, amongst a few other things that get thrown in there as we talk. Of course, conversations open up opportunities to discuss related areas as well. So I was really excited to get an opportunity to sit in the big red roasting rig itself and talk to Angie. I think you're going to find this conversation hugely valuable. So here is my interview with Angie Davis from Mill City Roasters. Angie, welcome to Keys to the Shop. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm great, actually. This is very posh. I'm in the big red roasting rig.
This might be the quietest interview that you do at Coffee Fest.
It is. It's a cocoon of coffee. It's great. So you give talks on roastery architecture. What's your role at Mill City, and what does that role entail in terms of working with the clients of Mill City?
Well, officially for Mill City, I am VP. I'm vice president. I am second in command. And what that means for, my team internally is that I have a lot of opinions about a lot of things. And so my teams internally really sort of defer to me on a lot of operational things inside Mill City Roasters. But for our customers, for the people that actually call up and get me on the telephone, for them, I'm really a resource in understanding the physicality of roasting equipment and also the physical requirements of coffee roasting itself.
Okay. And there's a lot of requirements. And there's a lot of ins and outs.
There
I'm
is.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because there's always different contexts that people are trying to fit roasters into.
Well, and it's interesting too, the question that I get most often when somebody is shopping for a coffee roaster, they will call me up and they will say, "Hey, Angie, my space is, this many feet by this many feet. What's the largest coffee roaster that I can fit in that space?" Mm-hmm. And that, that sounds like a logical question, right? And likely they've read somewhere on some forum on the internet, somebody giving them the advice of don't buy too small of a roaster.
Yeah.
Buy a roaster large enough to suit the capacity that you eventually want to be roasting. So that's a very logical question. But the question I would rather have them asking me and thinking about is, how much coffee can I process in that space? Because I think that people coming from cafe background or commercial kitchen background, they're really used to saying, oh, this is my list of equipment. This is the sizes of all those equipment, and you set that down in a kitchen, and then people operate within that. And when you do that in a coffee roastery, most coffee roasters, even from startups to mid-size scale to, thriving small coffee brands, the thing that takes up the most space in their roastery is not the equipment, it's the actual coffee.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because with coffee roasteries, we have technically, outside of, a retail coffee shop, we flipped over into manufacturing. Yeah. And the thing about manufacturing, 80% of the floor space is raw product coming in and processed product going out. And so one of the things that I do here at Coffee Fest, and also we do this internally, we teach a Roasting 101 class in Minneapolis every couple of months. And I have a little section in that class where we do this. We actually sort of sit down and we say, okay, this is the batch capacity of a coffee roaster. Let's extrapolate that drum size out and say, if you were only taking a green coffee delivery from your importer, say once a month, right? If we extrapolate that out and say, okay, if you're roasting 10 hours a day, 3 times a week, what does that look like? How many pallets of green coffee are in that delivery?
Yeah.
Right? Because really, and we've done that case study a number of different ways. We've looked at different capacities of roasters. We've looked at different amount of times that people roast during a week. And really, especially when you get into a mid-sized specialty coffee roaster, the footprint needed just for your green coffee is way bigger than what you need for the actual roaster itself.
Right. Yes. Yes.
And that's just green coffee. That's like the first step.
It's not the bagging area. No. It's the receiving, the doors that have to actually open.
You've got shipping and receiving. Hopefully you've got double doors, or you have an overhead door. You've got a packaging area where you might have a weigh-fill machine. You've definitely got scales. You've got an area shipping. I mean, think about, if you have aspirations, let's say a good aspirational number, if you have a website that sells coffee, if you sold 100 orders a day, if you made 100 orders a day on an e-commerce website, you're doing pretty good, right? Yeah. Now, think about that. 100 individual orders a day is 100 small cardboard boxes and 100 mailing labels. And that's, if you're doing that a couple of days a week, right? That's hundreds of boxes. That's several rolls of mailing labels. Where
does it all go?
Exactly. That's on a shelf somewhere. How big is that shelf and where is it?
Sure. So people that have I have, 100 square feet here, and I'm going to put a roastery in there. You have to think, okay, maybe take the roaster, yes, but then you're saying there's all of the things that come at the tail of that comet that is your idea of a roastery that you have to factor in. Space is one of them. And I imagine also just space for you as a person, as an operator to move, empty space.
Yes, because what you're talking about when you talk about that empty space is actually highly dictated by building code. Maybe not building code, but definitely mechanical code. That's actually written into the rules somewhere, is that if you have a human being operating a machine, you have to allow appropriate amounts of space for them to, first of all, just stand there. But second of all, if something goes wrong, it's called jump back space. That's commonly what we refer to it as, jump back space. And coffee roasters aren't very common. There have been no mechanical codes specifically written for coffee roasters. But what I do is I go into the mechanical code and I think, okay, what is an applicable piece of equipment that would have kind of the same safety concerns? I look at things around electric panels, right?
Okay.
There's very specific rules about, for an electric panel, you have to have this space for somebody who's in front of that panel to get away from that panel if something goes wrong.
Yes.
And so early days in Mill City Roasters, when I was actually developing the installation manuals for the machine, I would go through those things. I would go through mechanical code. I would go through fire code. I would look at, how can I take all of the things that exist for common pieces of equipment in our everyday lives? How can I apply those same safety components to coffee roasters so that, because it was, at the time when I started doing this 10 years ago, it was really, really rare to flip through even an installation manual for a specialty coffee roaster.
Yeah.
When I came along and, we eventually got our machines CSA certified, which was another sort of safety first for the industry, there was a lot of that work that had to sort of be done bare bones on the ground kind of for the first time. And so let's go back to your comment about 100 square feet. You said somebody has 100 square feet, because 100 square feet is kind of a common thing that I hear from coffee shop owners, right? Like they have a cafe, they've got a bar area, they've got seating for customers, and then somewhere in the back, they have a room that's about 10 feet by 10 feet, right? And in there, I would probably say, you know what, the maximum size roaster that you're going to fit in that space is probably about a 2-kilogram roaster. That's a couple of the roasters that we have here on the show floor this weekend. And in that 10 feet by 10 feet, you're probably going to fit that roaster. You're going to have the clearance required for a human being to safely operate that roaster. And then you're probably going to have a little bit of green coffee, maybe 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks of green coffee, but you're probably not going to have space for much else. You might not be you might not have a packaging area. You might not have, sinks or anything in that area. But the good news is that if you're in a coffee shop, you might have that space elsewhere. Your health department might allow you to say, you know what, you don't need a 3-compartment sink in that room because you have one already for your cafe. Mm-hmm. So that's where we see, especially for cafe owners, a little bit of flexibility in the requirements of what their space could be for a roasting area.
And so the viability of your roasting expansion depends on your ability to create enough product to satisfy demand. And if you don't have yet a space that can facilitate that, if you have to have so many different blends, or you've predicted, I need to have blends, I need to have single origins, I want an espresso, a drip, and all that. If you're talking about that restricted space, I mean, if you didn't know about the constraints beforehand, or at least didn't do the due diligence to actually list out, here are the spaces that I need, here's what we don't have, here's what we need to have, you'd pull the trigger on that. Or if it's not your building, you would get a storage unit or in an industrial part of your city, and it would still not be enough, and you'd be stuck with it. So do you see that happen where people are needlessly constrained in the profitability of their business based on things they could have preemptively known about beforehand?
Well, for sure. And, for most people, they're going to figure out ways to work around that, right? For example, we've been talking a lot about the footprint of green coffee. And, my numbers on that are based upon taking a green coffee delivery once a month. And the question is, well, why would you do that? Well, the reason is because freight is very, very expensive. I mean, I'm in Minneapolis, and my importer is 4 blocks away, Cafe Imports.
That's right. Yeah.
They literally will have a couple of guys bring a pickup load truck over to us every week with coffee. No problem. But for most people, that's not the case. Like for most people, getting a delivery of coffee means that someone in a city, maybe 4 to 6 hours away, has put pallets of coffee on a truck and sent it your way. Now, if we actually look at the cost to get coffee that way, right? I actually had, for this show, I had Cato over at Cafe Imports. I said, hey, I talk about this a lot. I talk about how expensive it is to actually get a freight shipment. And I said, can you actually just run me some numbers? And she ran them. And what it turns out is that, if you're not close to your importer, or if you're not close to a trucking terminal, the added cost, if you were just taking a pallet of coffee, that freight cost itself, depending on where you are, can add 50 cents to $1.75 to each pound of coffee.
Wow.
That's a tremendous amount. Now think if you're selling, 2,000 bags a month, that's, over $2,000 extra that you could have had in your pocket. If you just would have ordered coffee once rather than twice.
Wow.
So that's why, I try to encourage people, and I work with Bryant and Lauren on our education team and truly, my background is in architecture. I am a designer. Everything I know about this, I have learned by talking to people who do it, right? That's my role as a designer. And I really lean on my in-house education team and roastery team heavily to walk me through a lot of this and to understand their perspective. And I come into that role with a lot of empathy and a lot of understanding. But it is one of those things where, I have these ideas about, okay, freight shipping, how often should that be? I go talk to Lauren and Bryant, and let's talk about freshness, right? Let's talk about what is kind of a middle of the road idea about how long I want to be keeping green coffee in my roastery to begin with.
Yeah.
Right? It's probably not more than 6 months. Hopefully it's maybe not more than 3 months if you're cycling through coffee pretty quick.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's sort of like, yeah, a 1 month cycle for taking a inventory delivery is probably pretty reasonable. It requires you, though, to be able to look out into your 1 month future and be like, what's going to happen in the next month?
Yeah.
And I think most people should probably be able to do that. But anything beyond 1 month, I think it might start to get a little bit tricky.
Yeah, and it can impact the quality at some point. And the interesting thing here, and this is not architecture, it's more psychology, but if I feel very uncertain about the foundation on which I am marketing, so if I'm marketing the fact that we have coffee, just like a barista who doesn't want to make a pour over because it's really a pain in the butt to make a pour over,
Sure.
they're not going to upsell it. And
Yeah, maybe.
So maybe if your roastery is not really optimized as well as it could be, I mean, you're always going to make improvements. You're almost going to psychologically feel some inhibition to promote the product that would give you better cycles of green coffee and more of an in and out, like just in time, kind of a lean idea of production.
I think you're right. And also, like, to add to that, you are also in a position sometimes where there's some things that you are like, I got to move that. I have to figure this out.
Yeah.
You know, and in one way, there's a couple of ways to skin that cat. In one way, you can just heavily promote that coffee more than another coffee. But the other thing that you can do as a talented roaster is say, you know what, let me resample that. Let me resample it and see where it is right now. First of all, see if I need to rewrite my tasting notes on the bag, right? But also maybe I resample that with a goal of actually making it part of a blend. Maybe I can take this coffee that's aged a little bit, which still has a lot to give. It maybe wasn't what it originally was when it came through the door. But how can I take this inventory and remanage this inventory into a different product?
You mentioned empathy earlier, and it feels like in this time in coffee, because we built businesses a lot on mission and emotion and vision and things like that. But these days, I hear a lot of people talking about operations and systems, and the fact that you had to go to the codes of other trades to get codes for roasteries is a testament to the fact that people want empathy, yes, but then at the end of the day, expertise is
Certainty.
going to pay way more than just polite words or like, I understand you, but this actually will help you be more successful, which in the long run is actually better than us bonding right in this moment.
Yeah, that's true. You know, one thing that I say on my team internally is clarity is kindness. I think that, you know, buying a roaster is not a small amount of money. And our role when you call up and you have an interest in expanding a roastery, starting a roastery, our role is to sort of eliminate fear, uncertainty, and doubt from your decision-making process, right? And the way that I can do that on my side of things is that I can give you a tremendous amount of clarity around what the roaster is, how big it is, how you're going to install it. We talk about electric, we talk about gas, we talk a lot about venting, right? I can sort of become the subject matter expert for you. You can come at this totally, never done this before, not familiar with this, never even taken a crate off the back of a truck before. You're totally new, right? And I can talk you through this to the point where it no longer feels like a problem. It just feels like a job, right? A huge amount of the time that I spend with people on the phone is giving them just enough education around building codes, around dealing with your municipality, around, hey, these are the words that you should use when you talk to a prospective installer. I try to give you like just enough knowledge that you're able to turn around and advocate for yourself on a job site.
Sure.
Because things will go so much smoothly for you, you know, especially with installers. If you're asking for a bid from an installer and they say, what do you want to do? If you can come at that conversation from a place where an installer is listening to you and saying, oh, I think this person kind of knows what's going on. Number one, they're more likely to take the job if they have a little bit of confidence in you as a client, as a customer. It's really, really rare that you're ever going to stumble across an installer's like, oh yeah, we do coffee roaster installation every couple of weeks.
Yeah, they don't want to touch it. They're unfamiliar with it.
They don't want to touch it because it's going to take a little bit of time for them to actually figure out what the thing is. And it is not in their interest to spend their time doing that because they will never do it again, right? So if you can come at them and fill in the blanks for them and be like, this is what I'm trying to do. This is the size. This is the type. type. This is what I need. All of a sudden, you've eliminated that 20-minute research project for them, and they're more likely to talk to you more. And then, you know, if you're buying a roaster from Mill City Roasters too, you can simply just give them my phone number. They can call me and ask their questions. Nice. And the nice thing that what I try to do too is that if I talk to an installer, I always double back and talk to you. And I'll say, hey, just a heads up, I had an installer call on this project. This is what we spoke of. This is what I told them, right? Because I want to always kind of close the gap, because the person buying the roaster is my customer. The installer is your installer. So I always want to keep the customer in the middle of that conversation. That's
great. And you don't want people making their own calls because they feel like, you know, you just say, like, just make it happen. Put a hole in the ceiling. Put it there.
Oh, my gosh, no.
And when people do it, they all sorts of fancy ductwork and drill holes in places that shouldn't be.
Honestly, like, specifically about coffee roaster installations, the things that I see go wrong, and when I say I see them, I'm flipping through Instagram, right? I'm flipping through Instagram all day long looking at people's roasteries, and the most visible part of their installation is their venting, right? And I can spy it from a mile away. Oh, this person used B-vent. Oh, this person has flex duct. I was actually looking through, there was a big roast summit out in Portland, and they had a bunch of small scale roasters set up, and they were all connected with flex duct. And, you know, technically, it didn't meet code. It was just an event. It's sort of like, yeah, I look at that and I say, yeah, of course that's how that was done, because they were just trying to get set up and go for this event. Yeah. But I look at that and I think to myself, that just set me back about 2 years, right? Because now a bunch of people who are installing roasters permanently in their locations are going to think, I can use dryer vent to vent a coffee roaster.
Oh, yeah.
That's an incredibly bad idea, right? You're going to burn your building down.
The message is sent.
The message is sent. You know, and so just for full clarity, the reason we don't do that is because dryer vent is not meant to handle the heat that we're putting through it, even under normal operation.
Yeah.
But when we write our installation manuals for our machines, I have a factor of safety on the venting requirement, the heat requirement for that venting, because if you've been in coffee roasting for any amount of time, you know that eventually you are going to have a fire in your chaff collector.
Of course.
You are going to have a fire in your drum. And if you haven't cleaned your venting, all of a sudden that turns into a chimney fire. If you don't have the right venting, that ductwork will literally melt.
Yeah, and that ductwork is supposed to be graded for things like lint and not chaff.
Yes, exactly.
So it interacts with the medium differently.
You got it.
In that. And so it's so funny because the pictures that you're showing, you're watching on Instagram are the ones where people are like, we're so freaking proud of our roaster. Like, look at this high-res picture of this beautiful roaster. And you're thinking like, oh my gosh, like what's going to happen? Like, you know what's going to happen because you've seen it play out over and over again. And it leads me to this question, which is kind of like, there's an aesthetic value of having a roastery where people open roasteries as open concepts that is both hospitality and romantic notion of like, watch us do the thing that you drink, you know? And so how have you seen aesthetics and the dual concern of that part of opening a roastery limit the functionality or destroy the functionality of the roastery because we're trying to make it too pretty?
Well, that is a really interesting concept. And I'm slightly old enough to remember a time where we marketed products before Instagram. Right? In 2008, a couple of things happened that were very interesting. In 2008, there was a recession. In 2008, it was the start of Etsy. Etsy actually got going. Oh, wow. And also we had Instagram at that same time. And I do think that those three things combined fundamentally changed the way that we market small brands to people, right? There was this huge push for people, all of a sudden, everybody had a small business inside their house. Yeah. And Etsy, like really, really, truly, like it was part of their marketing thing is show people you making the product, show where you make the product, show, you know, make you and your space and your process part of marketing your product, right? And so that coupled with, you know, Instagram getting started, all of a sudden we had an entirely new way to market products to people where somebody who was like an individual, authentic person trying to do this little thing, all of a sudden that whole business development, that whole sort of their whole lives as little tiny business owners was on display as part of the product promotion. Now, Now, if we kind of tumble that through to kind of where we are right now as we sort of grow and scale, and now we're talking about coffee manufacturing, I think that fundamentally the problem is that it gets very, very expensive to do both, right? It gets very, very expensive to do a roasting space at scale that has, enough floor space to do all your production, a big fancy machine that's going to look really good on Instagram, the right venting, that you need for the function of that machine, and kind of all of these spaces. It gets really, really hard to do that in an Instagram-worthy way. There are some people that are doing it, but I think, you think through things like the big challenge that we have in Minneapolis is that I have an in-house roastery. It's set up to function to roast, hundreds of thousands of pounds of coffee every week. I have to have fluorescent lighting. Fluorescent lighting is a killer for a beautiful Instagram photo.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
It's sort of like, that's one of the things that we kind of struggle with when we shoot video, when we shoot our Instagram stuff. And for a long time, I fought that battle. Like for a long time, I was like, let's shut off the fluorescence. Let's add some different lighting. Let's get people to move closer to the window, right? We don't have a ton of windows in our facility.
Yeah, right.
Most food processing facilities don't have a lot of natural light. But, that's a tough thing. And really what that comes down to is, what space can you get into, right? And so, if you've ever tried to look for commercial real estate that would both be suitable for coffee roasting and also is very, very beautiful, those spaces are really few and far between, right? And so I think it's one of those things where you either do one really well or the other really well.
Yeah.
And you just kind of live with it. You work around it.
And if you're going to prioritize anything, ostensibly, this is like what you should do is a functional roastery. That is why you're doing it, I think, right?
Well, not necessarily, though.
No?
I mean, not necessarily. I think, I think that we, I was on a panel here at Coffee Fest yesterday. It was a marketing panel, and it was sort of like, tell us how to do this thing. And the panelists start telling people how to do the thing. But really what they're doing is they're telling people how they did the thing, right?
Yes.
And I think that there's a lot of different ways to be a business owner. There's a lot of different ways to make money. It's just a matter of like, am I focused on the processing, or am I more focused on brand building?
Yes.
And so I do not think necessarily one is going to be better than the other. I think I just want you to be safe no matter what you're doing. I want you to be safe. I want to make sure that your space is set up so that you're safe, or if you have people working for us, make sure that they're safe.
Yes.
If I can also just take like 20 seconds to plug. If you own a coffee roastery and you have somebody working for you, you have to have workers' compensation insurance.
Yes, of course. Yes.
We say, of course. But a lot of people simply just don't know. And so, I just want to
PSA. Angie says,
workers' comp insurance, please.
Okay. And safety first. And so, we could talk about a lot more here, but I want to wrap up just with the headline piece of advice here. Maybe if anyone leaves Coffee Fest here and has listened to this interview, what do you want people to really just walk away with when it comes to roastery architecture and how we can just advance as entrepreneurs of many different sizes in roasteries?
I think what I want to say is that you really have to have a little forethought. You need to kind of lay out your future a little bit and say, what do I want it to be? Right? If you want to be bringing in a certain amount of revenue, you need to be able to translate that really quickly to product coming into your roastery and product leaving the roastery. And then you should design a space that actually accommodates that product, right? So if you're revenue focused, you got to do that. If you just want to build a brand, if you just want to create an Instagram worthy photo every 3 to 4 hours that you can put out into the world, that's a different thing. That's great. I wish you luck. You can make a lot of money doing that too, right? But I think in general, just know that figure out what you want to do, figure out the type of business owner that you want to be, figure out kind of what your end goal is, and actually think through that in detail, what that means in your day. Think through your individual day and then design spaces that accommodate that day.
Great. Angie, this has been really fantastic and fascinating. There's so much more to learn. Where can people learn more?
People can learn more about Mill City Roasters at millcityroasters.com. If you are interested in kind of the nuts and bolts of coffee roaster installations, I have a lot of information on those pages of the individual coffee roasters. Go look at some coffee roasters. Scroll through those pages. I have some colorful diagrams with what they look like, how they're vented, different options for configurations. And if you just want to talk about roasting spaces, call me at the office.
Nice.
I literally talk to people all day long who just want to be like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Does this sound good? Right? And we talk through things. We'll talk through, roaster installations. We will talk through cottage food law versus U.S. Department of Ag certification, which has been a huge topic here at Coffee Fest.
Just before we recorded, you were talking to somebody down on the floor about that.
I was.
Yeah.
It's been a really hot topic because I think that a lot of people who are roasting coffee for money do not understand the actual specific laws that they're supposed to be doing it under.
Yeah.
So if you want to talk about that, give me a call at the office.
Angie, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, as promised, a lot of value delivered there, and Angie obviously does this for a living, and they are actively, constantly seeking how they can add value to coffee roasting businesses through their education and, of course, the equipment that they supply their customers with at Mill City. So go check them out at millcityroasters.com and have a conversation with them, see what they have to offer and how they can help you be successful as a coffee roaster. Now, we're going to end our time today with an interview from Sara Vettori, who is the founder of Asia Bites Consulting. Sara is a professional with extensive experience in leading businesses into prolonged periods of growth. And her experience in the food and beverage product world has led her into this consulting where she helps people place their coffee into places like grocery stores, which is a huge area of interest for a lot of roasters out there, and coffee shops as well who want to do ready-to-drink products, etc. And so today we're going to talk with Sara about what we need to account for when we are seeking to place our coffees in grocery stores. It's a whole new environment. There are some things that we might be familiar with the independent coffee shop landscape and wholesale landscape when we're selling to other small businesses like ours. But grocery stores can be a different animal. And Sara is going to break down some things that we need to keep in mind if we want to make this a serious part of our business. So let's get right to it. Rounding out our live interviews for Coffee Fest is Sara Vettori of Asia Bites Consulting. All right, Sara, good to meet you. How are you?
Good to meet you, Chris.
Welcome. Is this your first Coffee Fest?
Yes, it's my very first Coffee Fest. I'm very honored to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you.
I'm very excited as well.
So you are talking about retail in coffee and kind of like from a global scale, like a large scale retail here at Coffee Fest, right?
Yes, my background is in retail and FMCG, large scale FMCG from the beverage industry.
Okay.
In the last few years, I've worked also with coffee companies, helping them to enter FMCG and scale up. So this is a great opportunity also for specialty coffees from the US to talk about the opportunity that retail offers in the US, but also overseas.
Wonderful. So now you've been working with coffee. You said the last few years have been really focused on coffee. What do you do with Asia Bites in your consulting?
Basically, what we do is set strategies for brands. We help them to understand market opportunities, consumers' insights as well.
Yeah.
And then we set strategies together and then we execute the strategies. So it's basically accessing new markets or enlarging and growing the existing business.
Okay. So in that space, it's such a mystery to so many people here at Coffee Fest, especially small to mid-sized roasters and retailers. They're trying to sell beans in their stores and they're ready to drink in their stores. But there's this whole other level that is aspirational for them. But there's this, I don't know how to get from here to there. And I imagine some of what you're talking about in your presentation here is going to cover that. How do you think, what's the number one opportunity that you see for specialty coffee in that larger retail sector that people should really be focusing on right now?
Yeah, the opportunity is big, to be honest. The market itself is going towards premium coffee offers. Consumers are looking for better coffee options.
Yeah.
And this is a trend that started years ago, but has really became evident during COVID when people started being home, not being able to enjoy their coffee, the coffee shops. Without barista, they had to kind of learn. It was a tough exercise for most of the consumers, of course. So what we noticed emerged was a request for the same coffee quality cafe, but at home. People were looking for single origin beans, ground coffee, but especially capsules and pods. So something that could have been convenient to use, like easy. You just press a button and you got a nice cup of coffee, high quality, consistent. You don't have to be a barista to get at that level. And that's really what the market is looking for right now. The game is there, is how to bring specialty coffee and high quality coffee at the homes for consumers to enjoy without being baristas.
So the convenience is a big part of it, or at least ease of access. Like I will be successful with this coffee easily.
Yeah, I would say it's a combination of having brands and quality coffee accessible, so easy to find. I can be in New York, but I want a brand that I can find in California. So how to get that specific coffee, for instance, from a coffee shop that is not available in New York. That's the first thing. And retail here and e-commerce is what really starts to be the way to access coffees that are not available in the area where I live or where I work. Second thing is convenience. How I can brew coffee in the easiest possible way without compromising on quality.
Right. Okay. So now that we see this happening in grocery stores, when we go to Whole Foods, when we go to big companies like that, we dream of maybe our coffee could get in that place. Now, it sounds like, because you mentioned capsules and I mean pods and other things, those are maybe like the things that we see and say, well, I can't do that because I need the machine to put it in the pods. It's an investment. Is it necessary to invest in the equipment and the infrastructure to actually approach larger retailers? Or can you be successful just having a relationship that sells them whole beans?
A relationship is important. The question the roasters should ask themselves is what kind of products consumers really need at home and what kind of products they use at home. So if we look at the data and statistics, what's in a high demand right now is ground coffee, pods, and ready-to-drink coffee.
Right.
So beans are just a small fraction of the real business of retail. That might be surprising, but again, people who used to brew coffee at home, they are not baristas. So they can enjoy high-quality coffee. They want high-quality coffee, but they don't necessarily know how to prepare or how to brew and make it correctly. Beans can be fantastic in terms of quality, maintaining quality, the freshness of the product, but at the same time, you need to know how to use them. And that's really the obstacle when it comes to accessing retail and scaling up business. You can find whole beans, say, in upscale retailers, but the real business or the bigger business is not really whole beans, but it's something else that is more accessible and convenient to use.
When we talk about high quality, there's a perception of high quality, and then there's always something higher quality than what we think. So my home coffee that I get, my own bar at my kitchen, right? It's good. Is it as good as it possibly can be every single day? Not necessarily. So there's a little bit of a compromise that customers might be able to justify making for the convenience, it seems. And retailers also know this because they say, well, I don't want to pre-grind my coffee.
Yeah.
I don't want to put it in pods because they're not going to get the full experience.
I think it's really a matter of having a consistency in quality. The barista is usually able to get that consistency and have a cup of coffee that is always great. But when it comes to consumers at home, they aim to get that consistency, but it's hard to get that. It's not a compromise on quality, I would say, but it's how I get that quality in the easiest possible way.
And make it consistent.
And make consistency, yes. If we think about Nespresso, years back, what they did was simply create a concept that could bring different qualities of coffees at home, different experiences, but it was easy for consumers to press the button and have a cup of coffee that was perfectly brewed. And this is what made the Nespresso capsules so interesting for consumers. And they created an innovation that nowadays everybody basically uses at home. It can be K-cups, it can be Nespresso, compatible capsules, but we are talking about something that you need a machine to use.
And in branding too, of course. When you have George Clooney on your side, it helps a lot.
Branding is for any premium brand and product. It doesn't matter if it's coffee, if it's beverage, if it's food. anything you think about when you go into the premium sector, what you want is you want a brand that you know, that recognize. You want to, as a consumer, you want to understand the brand that is in front of you. You want to know it, and you want to be aligned with the values and the principles of
Okay.
the brand. So communicating your brand as a roaster to your consumers is really key when you go into retail.
Let me ask you about the two different sectors. There's the customer comes into your coffee shop and maybe they subscribe to your roasting program where you get beans delivered to your door. But then there's the grocery store. Do I need to change my brand when it goes to the grocery store, or should I keep the same brand in that larger retail context?
You don't have to change your brand. It's important to keep consistency in who you are. So when you want to access high volume retail, you don't have to change your
Yeah.
identity. It's important for consumers to find exactly the same quality, the same values, the same beans, and the same product that they expect to find in your coffee shops. So
Okay.
it's not changing your identity, but making sure that you offer the same quality. Let me give you an example. Intelligentsia, they worked for 7 years to develop a solution for consumers at home in K-cups. Why did they do that? It's because they wanted to have a product that could be as consistent as possible with the offer that consumers have in coffee shops, but in a format convenient for consumers to use. It's a process that requires time. As I said, it took them 7 years to develop. It's not an easy exercise. It takes a lot of patience to get there and patience as well. But it's important. The result at the end is what makes you different from any other brands. Intelligentsia is one of the brands that entered K-Cups. I still don't see a lot of specialty coffee brands going into that direction, which for me is a bit of a pity because the opportunity is there and the market is demanding capsules and pods for
Okay.
home consumption, let alone ready to drink coffee, which is a completely different category, but is extremely interesting as well if you want to keep consistency with the quality you offer in your coffee shops.
Yeah.
And cans are the best format you can use to offer on the go coffee without compromising on quality nowadays.
So it stands to reason that these days customers might get first exposed to coffee and develop their taste of what coffee can be based on grocery stores, based on the convenient items. Like their first interaction with Intelligentsia may be a K-cup in a grocery store that they bought versus me, like back in the early 2000s, it was competitions. It was like in the coffee shops. It was latte art and all this other stuff. So what does that mean for small to mid-sized retailers when the customer's taste and their palate for coffee is being developed by coffees that are given as a convenience option to coffee they could get in a coffee shop? How does that come back to us in retail, and what should we pay attention to in the in-person experience based on what's happening in the larger retail experience?
Well, retailers are investing a lot in choosing partners that comes from the specialty coffee field.
Yeah.
There are always programs to attract new brands, new roasters on the shelves. What really matters from the roaster's point of view is to ask themselves if they are ready to access those shelves, because that's business that changes also the operations they are used to have. Is no more running the show in your own coffee shops. Scaling up requires money and investments.
Yeah. Okay.
And from retailers' perspective, it's profitability. So retailers are looking for products that can move fast on shelves. There should always be a balance between quality and rotation on shelves. And I would say the most challenges that I see in the industry right now for specialty coffee producers is how to match the right price point that consumers are able to pay when they go into retail.
Okay.
Is no more going into a coffee shops and paying $6, $7, $8 for a cup, and it might be the treat of the week sometimes, but it's like spending dollars for multiple cups per day that you brew at home.
Yeah.
And that goes into the economics and how much consumers are willing to spend when they go to retailers.
So there's a transition period between like a dip. If I was to say I want my roastery to start accessing these larger markets, I should expect to be in the red a little bit at first before we start ramping up and get higher levels of distribution, or like more distribution, because I'm not selling it for as much, because I don't want to price people out. Because I know people who have actually tried to do grocery stores and they said, we're not making enough money and we're spending so much time and energy, we're just going to pull it from the shelves. So it feels like a waiting game. Who can go the longest without making money to eventually make money?
At the very beginning is an investment. To be very honest, entering retail is an investment. It's a way to be noticed, to enlarge distribution, to build your brand awareness.
Okay.
Profitability is not going to be there at the very beginning. That's the reality of the game
but
of retail. But it's a long-term, or I wouldn't say long-term, probably a medium-term investment.
What is the medium term, like 5 years or?
It's probably 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
You need to reach a critical mass in terms of volumes. You need to leverage on economy of scales when it comes to production, optimization of cost, production cost, operational cost, logistics. And you need a scale to do that. So at the very beginning, what is really important is to understand the cost related to being on shelf.
Yeah.
It's nice to be on the shelf, but the first question should be how many bags or how many packs I'm going to move in a week or in a month. I'm going to reach the threshold that is needed and is required by retailers to remain on that shelf.
That's difficult.
That's difficult and goes back to really understanding retailers, cherry picking them sometimes. Not all the retailers are the same. Each retailer have a different market, different consumer. They target different people with different purchasing power and expectations. So my first advice for roasters would be really go out into the market, enter as many retailers as possible, understand what kind of retailers you have in front and make a choice. So who you want to partner with.
Yeah.
You don't have to be everywhere. It's better to be in 1 or 2 retailers and selecting them correctly rather than being in 10 and diluting your efforts and finding out that the money is not enough to sustain the business.
And your success is up to you, not them necessarily, because it's on the shelf. And sometimes you're not even in control of where it is on the shelf. Everyone wants the eye level, mid level. That's already taken. So you're down here by the kneecap of every consumer, right?
Well,
how do you promote it so it's successful?
You need to help yourself when you are in retail. And that's where branding and really communicating and building your brand awareness pays out. If you just place your products on the shelf, that's the first step. Nice, but the journey starts from there. It's really true. I mean, retailers are not going to move goods for you. So it's the brand that has to take care of its own products, being smart on packaging design, be smart on how you communicate, for instance, to consumers where they can find you in retail.
Okay.
Think about the QR codes on packs. I've spent the last 2 days walking around different retailers, just checking packs and packages. I found that many roasters don't even have a QR code on the pack.
Right.
QR code nowadays instrumental to communicate your brand. It's a smart way to have a direct access to your website, to your social media, to TikTok channels, however you want to communicate your brands to consumers. But it's important to have a point of communication with your consumers. The brand has to be communicated, and that's the first step. And that's an investment that goes back to the brands and not to retailers.
Yes, indeed. So you get prepared to work, but there's rewards at the end if you can do it. And I imagine a lot of this stuff you're going to go over in your talk, and this is what you help people do. So how can we learn more about what you do? Where can we follow you at Asia Bites and stay plugged in?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, That's the easiest way to reach me. What we do is basically we support brands in really understanding what are the needs of retailers.
Yeah.
Also, what are the tricks on working with retailers, what is needed, and what is the best strategy to make sure that you scale up your business and you are successful when you hit the shelf for the first time.
Yes. All right. Sara, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Okay.
It was great being with you here.
Take care.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much to Sara for being on the show and taking time, sitting down with me and talking about this, a fascinating area that I think we all should dig into a little bit more. And certainly Sara has helped us in the starting point for our journey. And if you're interested in learning more about Asia Bites and what Sara does, then definitely contact her on LinkedIn. You can find her Sara Vettori, SaraVettori. And from there, you can learn about what she offers and what is happening over at Asia Bites Consulting. And so that is our roundup of interviews for Coffee Fest New York City. And coming up shortly, we have New Orleans. Go to coffeefest.com, sign up today, and you can experience excellent speakers like this and many, many more at Coffee Fest. So thanks everybody so much. I hope that these interviews were very helpful for you. If you want to help the show, spread the word about Keys to the Shop, again, it would be awesome for you to share these episodes and share the show on social media especially. Subscribe to Keys to the Shop on podcast platforms as well as YouTube. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.